This was a nefarious act. This was an evil act. Somebody murdered Rasheem Carter. And we cannot let them get away with this. I mean, when you look at these pictures taken at the autopsy, it tells you that there's nothing natural about this. It screams out for justice. And his mother, Tiffany Carter, had the courage to say, Attorney Crump, Attorney Moore, y'all show it all. Show it all so people know what they did to my baby. Somebody seen what happened to Rasheem.
"25-year-old Rasheem Carter, a native of Fayette, Mississippi, was a proud father of a 6-year-old daughter. He was a highly skilled welder and millwright. He also ran his own seafood restaurant, which was forced to close due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So he applied for a short-term position at Clement Mechanicals with Georgia Pacific in Taylorsville, Mississippi, as a welder subcontractor, just to earn some money so he could reopen his business. Taylorsville is just under a 2-hour drive away from his hometown, Fayette, and he started his employment with Georgia Pacific in September 2022. Less than a week later from his start of employment, Rasheem went missing on October the 2nd from Taylorsville, and his family filed a missing persons report with the Laurel Police Department. Rasheem was staying with his co-workers at a Super 8 hotel in Laurel, which is 20 miles east from Taylorsville. They would drive to their workplace each day, which would be about a 26 to 30 minute drive. I've read reports that Rasheem's car had broken down, so he was relying on a lift with a co-worker to their place of employment, and on one occasion, I think it was, they had a disagreement and the co-worker had told Rasheem, "I can drive you in there, but you have to find your way back home. I won't be driving you home back to the Laurel Hotel." So after he knocked off work that afternoon, he was stranded basically in Taylorsville. He didn't know anybody. He had no way of getting back to Laurel Hotel, so he went and asked many people for a lift back to Laurel, even offering gas money, but nobody would give him one. Not long after, Rasheem had called his mother, Tiffany Carter, in a state of distress. He stated that 3 pickup trucks full of white men were chasing him and they were hurling racial abuse at him. Naturally alarmed by this, his mother has urged him to go to the police, which Rasheem did. Tiffany was in Pennsylvania at the time, around 1,300 miles away, so she just wanted him to get to a place of safety. And he's on the phone to his mother still at this stage whilst he's at the Taylorsville Police Department, so she can hear what's going on in the background between Rasheem and the police officer, and stating to them that he feared for his life. He states that these guys are after him and that he needs their help. He asks the officers for a lift back to Laurel so that he can get back to his motel, and they refuse, stating that it's out of their jurisdiction and they're not a taxi service. And they told him he couldn't stay there. Right after leaving the police department and getting off the phone to his mum, he sent a text message to her saying, "Me and the owner of this company are not seeing eye to eye, Mama. If anything happens to me, he named his name, is responsible for it." He said, "I'm too smart for it, Mama. He got these guys wanting to kill me." In another conversation, he had provided the names of his co-workers to her. His mum freaked out at this stage and tried to call him, but it kept going to voicemail. So she called her uncle, who lived not far from the area, in hopes that he could go and get Rasheem. She was having trouble getting through to her uncle and was also trying to call Rasheem back, but it kept going to voicemail. So she was panicking, thinking, is he okay? And finally he had sent her a text message stating, "I'm good, mama," which in their terminology means, "I'm safe, I've found somewhere safe to be." His family do not know where he stayed that night. Between 5:30 and 6 a.m. the next morning, October the 2nd, Rasheem revisited the Taylorsville Police Station and again asked them for their help. His phone was on a very low battery. He tried to use one of their chargers and it didn't fit apparently, so he went to a general store to buy another one. Around 10 a.m. he called his mother from a general store and he had explained to her that the men were still chasing him, trying to harm him. And I'm pretty sure it was at this stage that he had heard the cashier say, "He's in here." She had received a phone call from someone asking if he was in there. He quickly exited the store at 10:17 a.m. and he had told his mum that his phone battery was on 1%. She said, "Quickly drop your PIN location, I've got my best friend coming to get you." That was the last time his family heard from him. Tiffany's best friend turned up at Taylorsville around 1:30 p.m. and Rasheem was nowhere in sight. I think she was there for about 2 hours just driving around and asking people if they'd seen him, but to no avail. Rasheem's family reported him missing that same day. I'm pretty sure it was with the Taylorsville Police Department, but from what I've read from his family's accounts, the Taylorsville Police Department had handballed the case to the Laurel Police Department, which is pretty ironic, seeing as they were saying that they couldn't give him a lift because it was out of their jurisdiction. They're handballing his case to another jurisdiction. He worked in Taylorsville, he was last seen in Taylorsville, he went missing in Taylorsville, his remains were found in Taylorsville. Yet somehow the Laurel Police Department were the ones dealing with the case. This Facebook post by the Laurel Police Department states that Rasheem was last seen October 2nd outside the Super 8 Hotel in Laurel. It makes me wonder who gave them that information. A week later, on October 8th, Tiffany Carter and her family and many supporters arrived in Taylorsville to search for Rasheem. While there, Tiffany soon learned that the Taylorsville Police Department were not really cooperative in helping her receive answers regarding her son's whereabouts. Her and her family were receiving conflicting information from the police officers. First, they told her that Rasheem had gone in there and had said he didn't want to press charges on those who were chasing him, and the next minute they're saying they didn't know anything about anyone chasing him. And then when the family questioned them why they wouldn't allow Rasheem to stay in there for his own safety, because they are there to serve and protect, they lied and said that they did say that he could stay there. But little did the police know that Rasheem had his mother and his aunt on a phone call whilst he was in the station that night, and they could hear everything. When Tiffany had asked the police what they had done in terms of searching for her son, they said that they were patrolling the area, but to the family's knowledge they never got out of their cars searching for Rasheem. They didn't knock on doors. There were no missing persons posters being created. There was really nothing being done. When Tiffany and her family asked police if they had checked any footage for Rasheem, they had stated they didn't see Rasheem on any footage. And when Tiffany and her family had gone to the various businesses in Taylorsville, some were resistant to show their footage. Some said that their cameras weren't working. But when they went to the Dollar General store, which is where Rasheem was last talking to his mum on the phone, they were able to obtain 2 hours of footage that they could go through, and that's when they spotted him going out the door. Some locals were helpful to Rasheem's family. They had stated that they recognised him, that he was of sound mind, and that he had just got off work, and that he had to get away from people who were after him, and that these locals had actually told the police the same thing. Why those people didn't help him, I have no idea, but it seems like the town is a little cliquey. As of 2023, the current population of Taylorsville, Mississippi is 1,112, which consists of 61.44% of white people and 37.39% of Black or African American people. Taylorsville is described by some as a sundown town. This means that black residents are afraid to be out after dark because of racial groups such as the KKK or Aryan Nation. A former Taylorsville police chief, retired 10 years ago, posted a pic of himself on Facebook in a Confederate flag t-shirt, and another picture showed the Confederate leader Jefferson Davis. Sadly, on November 2nd, 2022, Rasheem's partial remains were found in woodland on private property in Taylorsville near Highway 37. His skull was recovered in one area, and his spinal cord was recovered from another area away from his head. Ben Crump, the family lawyer, said that this is a modern-day lynching. Rasheem's head was severed from his spinal cord, and all of his remains were not yet found at that stage. They'd been scattered around. At a later date, a second set of remains would be found, and they were released to the family February the 16th. And on February 23rd, a third set would be found. And only one day after Rasheem's skull and spinal cord were recovered, the Smith County Sheriff Joel Houston stated that there was absolutely no evidence that suggested foul play. He and the police chief, Gabe Horn, of the Taylorsville Police Department, asserted that Rasheem had simply walked off into the woods, had died there, and that animals got to his remains. Which is a strange thing to say, considering that, first of all, remains have to be forensically examined during an autopsy process before any cause of death or manner of death is ascertained. And being only the second day which these remains were found, and they were only partial remains, you would think that there would have to be investigations in terms of questioning the people on that private property and the surrounds, any eyewitness accounts, plus investigating the co-workers, where the text messages that Rasheem had sent to his mother and that she had given to the police, they were aware that he was in danger and had stated that he was in danger, and that if he came up missing, his co-workers and boss were responsible. That and the fact that Joel Houston and the Taylorsville Police Department, among many other law enforcement officials and Rasheem's family, had in their possession a still frame image of Rasheem from a deer trail cam on that private property where his remains would later be found. This was captured on October 2nd. And apparently the private property owner had forwarded the footage to the police and to Rasheem's family on October 28th.
Resident Nikki Blakeney saw an image of Rasheem on his trail deer camera. It was taken at about 4:30 p.m. the following day.
The gentleman was coming this way. He was walking this way and he was looking at this feeder, but the camera was here. I didn't see him looking at the camera, but I only had the one picture.
It would be the last time Rasheem was seen alive. Shirtless, no shoes, carrying a stick.
A piece of flagging right here was placed there by the sheriff's department when they did their search. They had nowhere to look for that guy. If I hadn't took that camera picture up there, they would have had nowhere to start from. I know a lot of people have been upset about it. A lot of people said, well, if you hadn't have did that, we wouldn't be having any kind of troubles and all that they kind of seem to be having. I said, well, I got to do the right thing. And I said, if I did it again, I'd do the right thing. And I said, the right thing was to turn that in for his mother and them to have some kind of closure.
Looking at this photo of Rasheem, you can see bruises, what look like bruises on his left shoulder. He looks like he has a bruise, like a big bruise on the left of his waist, just above his jeans there. And he's shoeless, obviously shirtless. Knowing the story that we do now, and he's holding a big stick, he's looking over at those woods. He looks like he's running, or, he looks like he's obviously on the defense. He looks scared to me. Like he knows or feels there's somebody there over there in those woods. I don't know what that item is on the bottom left, on the ground, right on the bottom left of the photo. I don't know if it's a dead animal or what, or maybe I'm just seeing things. It could be a stick, I don't know, but it just looks a bit weird to me. When his body was found, there appeared to be a cell phone battery with his remains. He had his Super 8 hotel key and wallet with his bank cards. A cell phone charger and a vape was there, and I think there was cash found in the wallet. But where are his shoes? Where is his red shirt that he was wearing in that CCTV footage at the general store? Where's that? And the most important thing here is, where is his phone? His phone is missing. Did he lose it during a scuffle with somebody? How did he get out there on this private property near Highway 37. The police initially told the family that Rasheem's phone pinged at the Dollar General store, and then later told them that his phone pinged last at Clear Creek. And his family believe he didn't walk out there. I think he's been picked up in a vehicle and he's been taken out there. Maybe he jumped out of the vehicle and that's how they got onto the private property. Especially if they're co-workers coming in from other states and may not be familiar with the area. They might know locals of Taylorsville to be able to go on that property, unless he just randomly ran in there and they chased after him and then, they got to him there. Whoever did this to Rasheem's skull had access to tools which could make clean cuts like this, and tools that were most likely in a work truck. Why did Joel Houston assert that there was no evidence whatsoever to suggest foul play? Understandably, the family reacted in complete disbelief and anger at this ignorant statement. Later, backpedaling on that statement, he stated that foul play was not ruled out and that they weren't sweeping things under the rug. Rasheem's family and friends and supporters already had their suspicions and trust issues with law enforcement, with the way that Rasheem's case was dealt with from day one. This young man was not listened to. He was fobbed off, and he ended up dead. His family were not listened to. They were fobbed off and lied to and gaslit, basically telling them that Rasheem wandered off into the woods on his own, delirious, dehydrated, possibly on drugs. Maybe he had mental illness. These are the things those police told the family, who know very well that Rasheem was of sound mind, was not a drug user, did not have a mental illness, and had no reason to be in those woods because he knew he had a ride coming for him that day. The Taylorsville police knew that Rasheem was in danger. He had begged them for help, and they denied him that help. They and the Laurel Police Department were also not helpful to the family, who were requesting answers for that whole month when Rasheem was missing. They had questioned the Laurel Police Department about the co-workers and if they had interviewed them. The Laurel Police Department stated that they had no reason to bring those people in for questioning, that they had conducted phone interviews, and that those co-workers were already out of the state. Rasheem's family were left in the dark. They weren't even receiving Rasheem's phone records, bank records, or hotel records. They had no information whatsoever to go on. One thing they did find out was that $500 was withdrawn from Rasheem's account on October the 4th. But the sheriff said this was an error and that the credit card was last used in August 2022. There are suspicions that law enforcement didn't even bother going to the bank to check the transactions or the CCTV footage at the ATM. But what the family could rely on was Rasheem's texts that he had sent to his mum and the conversations he had had with her right before he disappeared, stating that his boss was responsible for his going missing. Rasheem's remains had been sent to the state crime lab in Pearl, Mississippi. The autopsy was completed on February the 2nd, and the results were released that the cause of death could not be determined. Tiffany Carter and her lawyer Ben Crump ordered for an independent autopsy, and on March 13th they held a press conference to let the world know what was revealed. Rasheem's bones were cleanly cut, he was decapitated, they believe he was lynched. His remains were dismembered and scattered around in so many different areas. This was not a natural killing, Crump said.
This was not a natural killing. This was not a natural death. This represents a young man who was killed. His head was severed from his body. His vertebrae, his spinal cord, was in another spot they discovered away from his severed head. They have recently found remains that they believe are also Rasheem Carter at another part of where he went missing. And what that tells us is that this was a nefarious act This was an evil act. Somebody murdered Rasheem Carter. And we cannot let them get away with this. I mean, when you look at these pictures taken at the autopsy, it tells you that there's nothing natural about this. It screams out for justice. And his mother, Tiffany Carter, had the courage to say, Attorney Crump, Attorney Moore, y'all show it all. Show it all so people know what they did to my baby. Somebody seen what happened to Rasheem. Somebody seen what happened to Rasheem. And we have to keep the pressure on until we get to the truth. And so today, we're calling for the Department of Justice to open an investigation as to what happened to Rasheem Carter. Somebody seen what happened to Rasheem. And it doesn't make any sense at all, because the text message that his mother got before he went missing is a part of the clue to solving this murder. And it has to be investigated. Do you want to read it, Tiffany?
I'll read it.
You don't have to say the name. But.
Okay.
And what date it was?
This was on October the 1st. My son texted me. This was after him and I had gotten off the phone. He said, me and the owner of this company not seeing eye to eye, Mama. His name, which I can't say at this time, but if anything happened to me, he's responsible for it. I'm too smart, Mama. He got these guys wanting to kill me. And that's what he sent to me.
And then he went missing.
On December 31st, 2022 and February the 5th, 2023, Tiffany and her family and supporters went to Taylorsville for a peaceful protest. At the front door of the Taylorsville Police Station that was locked, Tiffany was yelling out for transparency. Even though the Taylorsville Police Department officers were refusing to come out to talk with Tiffany and her family and the protesters and answer their questions, there were many police officers from different jurisdictions attending and showing their presence. Tiffany and her family were met with some really racist townfolk. They were yelling and hurling abuse and calling them names, which I'm not going to repeat, and they were yelling at them to get out of their town.
Sorry, son of a bitch.
And one charming local resident, James Ainsworth, put up on his Facebook profile a post that reads, "It is sad to say when Black Lives Matters come protesting with ARs in the hometown you have grown up in and threaten to fill you full of 223 holes, and the law enforcement tells a man that is trying to stand up for you that they are going to take him to jail instead of taking the blank with a gun doing the threatening to jail. It is sad that it has come to these times, but if they come back and threaten me again since I witnessed what I did today, I will be healed and I will send the next black sons of bitch or bitches to see their hog-ape brother in hell. I do promise everyone in this God-forsaken land which I live in that. True talk, white power." There was a video of a boy at a local school joking within the classroom that the police turned him down, but a local man's pigs didn't. The use of the word hogs was particularly alarming to Rasheem's family because they had heard along the grapevine that people in Taylorsville saw Rasheem's body being fed to hogs. The boy said, "He's got Rasheem's body parts in his yard. FBI, you all need to go search his house." And this picture was posted by the Taylorsville Police Chief Gabe Horn right after the 5th of February protest, showing a man hosing down a chalk-written message that read, "Rasheem's life mattered." Now, the worst thing about it is that he's put up above the picture little cleanup with exclamation marks and a waving emoji. And his own friends or family down below are saying, "Get it done." And someone else is saying, who's obviously related to him, "Need any help?" It's just disgusting. When Gabe Horn posted that ugly post, he had done it on Facebook under friends only, so that no one in the public would be able to see it. However, somebody, most likely on his friends list, has screenshot it and has shared it with the public, or maybe the family, because it's on the internet right now. And Falika Kaho, who is Rasheem's auntie, she is Tiffany Carter's sister, and she is amazing. I just love her strong soul, and her and Tiffany and all the family, you know, they're all amazing, strong people to fight for justice for Rasheem. And she's been very vocal, tagging family and everybody that she can, Falika has been, and Tiffany, you know, to expose the racism that they have faced and the disrespect that they have faced from the police departments. This is one post Falika has posted on the 7th of February. And she's posted this on the 6th of February. I'm in Australia, so when I screenshot things, it shows a day after from when that original post has been made. But she says, "Well, I just have to speak on Taylorsville Chief of Police Gabe Horn and his post after our protest, Justice for Rasheem Carter. Was it not enough that you didn't help Rasheem Carter when he asked for help? It wasn't enough that you had your hands in his murder? Then you get on Facebook and make this post about just a little cleanup. How can any chief of police get on Facebook and boast about a situation where a mother lost her son and a daughter lost her father? How disrespectful is that? Do you ever consider how this post would make my family feel? How could you post something like this when a life was taken away from a young black man? We already know you didn't care, but to just come out and admit it on Facebook, not only does it show my family how much you care about Rasheem being murdered, it also shows the African American citizens of Taylorsville how you feel about them too. How can this man be the chief of police who is supposed to protect and serve when he lacks morals, values, integrity, empathy, and does not fear God? Do me a favour, Gabe Horn. Just go ahead and step down. Lay that badge on the desk. My people in Taylorsville pay attention to who co-signs on his stupidity and agrees with his post. Do not utilise their business. Take your business somewhere else. I 100% agree with her. It seems there's a few sketchy things going on with the Taylorsville Police Department, specifically involving Police Chief Gabe Horn. And we have a post here that was put on Facebook in 2021. This lady says, "July 14th, my teenage cousin was baited to come to Piggly Wiggly in Taylorsville, where 3 grown women and 2 minors jumped my 16-year-old cousin. The police chief Gabe Horn and Deputy Jacob Horn held and pulled her, and I witnessed the beating. Upon initial questions, Sheriff stated he didn't witness any adult touching the minor. Family is looking for a lawyer in this matter or help to point in the right direction to what we need to do. Macy Jordan is one of the grown women. She worked as dispatch in Taylorsville as well." And some locals in Taylorsville have reported anonymously that just recently Gabe Horn has been meeting up with local white men who are known to be racist, one including James Ainsworth, and they go to different cafes and they're huddled around a table whispering to each other, like they're in a secret meeting. Some of these white men that he has coffee with on the regular were at the protests regarding Rasheem, and they were the ones yelling out racial abuse to the family and supporters. It gets more interesting. Rasheem's family find out that the police chief, Gabe Horn, is related to the lead investigator of Rasheem's case. Now, he is Mitch Blakeney from the Laurel Police Department, which is interesting, his last name, because he shares the same surname as the property owner, Nick Blakeney, where Rasheem's remains were found. And he had in possession the still frame image of Rasheem running through the woods there because that's his deer trail camera. It is an interesting triangle that Gabe Horn and the lead investigator and the property owner are all related. Some residents from Taylorsville have been speaking to Rasheem's family. One Facebook post of Felika's reads, "The property owner had the picture of the deer camera footage way before October 28th, but didn't report it until the 28th. But other people saw it before the 28th. As a matter of fact, someone called the tip line 3 times and reported it." How much of an investigation do you think they really did or are doing? No foul play. It definitely sounds like some foul play and some covering up to me. Despite Ellie's claims that animals had gotten to Rasheem's remains, I read in an article that Rasheem's family had said his skeleton was greasy with a sticky substance. Rasheem's story and the injustices around his case soon spread like wildfire, and Black Lives Matter groups and protest rallies would be organised and conducted in Taylorsville. Rasheem's family and his mum had so much support as a result of internet networking, news media broadcasts and the advocacy of their lawyer, Ben Crump, plus the involvement and support of various civil rights organisations. And famous musician Cardi B had tweeted about Rasheem's case, which his cousin and Tiffany had thanked her for. One major thing stood out to people who watched the press conference. Not only were the independent autopsy results a revelation about what happened to Rasheem, but when Tiffany had read out his texts to her, stating that his boss and his co-workers were responsible for his disappearing, almost immediately, Rasheem's former boss, Luke Clements, was targeted by Rasheem's supporters, and even those on the internet who had never met Rasheem or his family. Tiffany had never actually mentioned his name due to legal reasons, but people had tracked him down because they knew the name of his company. Threats were being made on Luke Clements' Facebook page, and people were inundating his company's voicemails with hateful messages, even going as far as threatening to harm his wife and children. I have to say I don't agree with the fact that people are targeting his children. They did nothing wrong in this situation, and as far as we know, Rasheem never mentioned Luke's wife to his mum in those texts. Luke had lawyered up with the guy called Mark O'Mara, who is a friend of his on Facebook. A quick look through Luke's friends shows some who have qualifications with law and criminal justice. Interestingly, the North Carolina Beat had reported that anonymous sources had told them that Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina Police Chief Billy Martin and Captain Jamie Hardy had been suspended without pay for allegedly helping Clements stay informed on the next move of authorities in Mississippi. However, the Roanoke Rapids City Attorney Davis quashed those rumours, basically stating that the suspensions of these officers were around an incident within their own jurisdiction and is a personnel matter and non-criminal in nature. In March 2023, News Nation had an interview with Luke Clements and his lawyer, Mark O'Mara. The narrative basically points towards Luke's innocence and that he and his family are victims of threats from the public. Let's watch what they have to say.
We brought you the story of Rasheem Carter in Mississippi. He disappeared. He told the police and his mother he was afraid that there were a group of white men that were threatening him. And then they found his body in the woods, decapitated, body parts separated. Police said no foul play. That was weird. But then police also said it was possible for animal activity, and we checked with the death investigator who said 100% that was possible at that time, with that length of time in the woods. Rasheem's the family wants a federal investigation into this. They are very upset about it. They actually have said this was an evil act. Through their lawyer, Ben Crump, this was an evil act. Somebody murdered Rasheem Carter. The family just released a statement to the public saying that Rasheem told them that if anything should happen, then definitely his boss was responsible. And they haven't produced that text, they haven't produced that evidence, but what that did was it set a mob in motion. An online mob has gone after that boss. That boss's name is Luke Clements, and Luke's family was targeted by the internet mob. There were death threats against Luke, against his wife, against his kids, his little kids, and there were rape threats made against Luke's wife. The whole Clements family has had to go into hiding at this point, now fearful of their life. All the contracts that they've had to stop. All those workers were laid off. And there is evidence that has surfaced that shows Luke could not have done this crime. I want to bring in Luke Clements, who is in hiding. He was Rasheem's boss. He owns that company that hired Rasheem to work in Mississippi. And Luke also is doing this interview with his attorney, Mark O'Mara, who is joining us as well live tonight. Luke, let me start with what's happened to you and your family and why you decided to get everybody and immediately go into hiding.
You know, after the national press conference, you know, all throughout the process of the Rasheem case and all, we, you know, I've continuously, ever since he went missing, have received calls and always receiving things, you know, via the internet and social media. But once the national press conference hit the news, it just got relentless. You know, we started getting death threats. You know, it started being accusations made toward my wife and my kids. And then it was just relentless. I mean, they would call me every minute, every 2 minutes. They'd leave me messages until my voicemails filled up on my phone. Text messages were just horrific text messages, just stating some horrific things that they wanted to do to me and my wife and my children. They've contacted, you know, different family members. Anybody who was associated with me has been contacted. And, you know, it just got to the point where I felt like it was the safest thing to do to just take my family out of the picture.
Let me read some of the text messages that you have received from this online mob. Okay, I'm going to start here. And there are some things I've had to obviously redact because they are so horrendous.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
and your family will suffer, and your kids will suffer for the rest of their life. The next text is, the guy who killed Rasheem Carter is Stephen Luke Clements. Stop waiting on the police to give y'all justice. His wife's name is blank. And of course, they used the name. This next one is, you are being followed everywhere you go. What goes around comes around. This next one is about your wife, and it's a rape threat. I've had to redact it heavily. It says, that pretty little blank of yours will have blank, which is sexually explicit language, when your eyes roll to the back of your head. Don't get caught on here. The next text is about your children. It says, your children will be left on this planet with our race. You better pray to your white God that we have mercy on them. Luke, what have the police done about these threats to you and your family?
We've made contact with all the local law enforcement, the sheriffs and all in our county, and they're aware of everything that's going on. They've been very supportive. You know, I've definitely had a lot of support from the local law enforcement. And they've made continuous checks, you know, on our business and our properties and all of the areas that are locally. And they've also they've been very supportive as to talking to me and just checking on me and just making sure that everything was okay. It's just been it's really, I mean, it's unfortunate, you know, and we, you know, I want to find out what happened to Rasheem, and I want to help any way we can, and we have, you know, we've made every effort to you know, address any of these accusations that have been made, and it's just unfortunate that you know, that it's just been a rough time.
And listen, Rasheem's parents, his family's been on this program as well, wanting, you know, to seek answers. And at that time did not point the finger at you. But I do want to mention, Mark O'Mara, there's a collection of evidence that you've put together in terms of looking at everywhere that your client was, where Luke was while Rasheem was seen on a deer cam, and text messaging between Luke and his employee, Rasheem, and a lie detector test as well that I know you've said, you know, Luke has taken and passed. My question is, why do you think that Rasheem's family wrote this? They said that there was a text that her well, she hasn't shown it, but she says that she has a text from her son saying, me and the owner of this company are not seeing eye to eye, Mama. If anything happens to me, he's responsible for it. What do you make of this coming from Rasheem Carter's family?
Sure. Well, first, we haven't seen it. I want to. I've asked for it. I'm hoping it's going to come. I believe and hope that law enforcement does have it. And if it says those words, then I'm sure there is some other explanation that we don't know of yet. But we also have a text string between Rasheem and Luke the very night that supposedly he had said this to his mom, and the text screen, which I'd given to you, Ashley, and is available, is very friendly. It talks about the work the next day. He didn't end up showing up, but work into the future. But what I did when Luke first came to me, I looked at him quite honestly with a jaundiced eye. I said, okay, if I'm going to help you, we need to prove innocence, a difficult thing to do. So I asked him literally on the phone, get me your phone records. He did. Get me employment records. He did. Get me records showing where you were that next day, October 2nd. He was at work 6:22 in the morning, didn't leave until 8:44 at night in a secure facility. He wasn't there when whatever happened to Rasheem happened to him. And then we ran him through a polygraph. Did you know anything about Rasheem's passing? No. Did you harm him in any way? No. Did you have anything to do with it or any knowledge of it? No. The problem with it is that even if Miss Tiffany, Rasheem's mom, didn't intend this horrible tidal wave of violence, it's there because in the internet, one little thing is taken as the truth and it can blow up and hurt people. And that's the concern we have right now.
Understandably, there's no excuse for people jumping to conclusions and becoming law enforcement themselves, and then going after a person's wife, a person's children. Let's stay on this. Mark O'Mara, please keep us posted on what's happening. Luke Clements, I wish you safety with your family, and I do want you to keep us posted on the developments in this case. Thank you both.
So we've pretty much heard in this interview, a poor me, I'm a victim, my family's a victim, we've had to go in hiding, and it's all because of Tiffany, saying or referring to my company and me being the boss, that I'm involved. And really, it just seems like he just feels sorry for himself. Now, objectively, if he is innocent, which I kind of find it hard to believe, but they do say innocent until or unless proven guilty in a court of law. So we do have to look at it that way in terms of, legalities. It's all alleged at this stage. But I'm going to believe Rasheem's mum over this guy. That's just how I feel. If I was in her position and had a text like that from my son, I'd also be stating it very publicly. When Mark O'Mara states that law enforcement most likely have Tiffany's text from Rasheem, and if it states those words exactly, there's got to be, there's possibly another explanation for it. I would like to hear that explanation. He's saying if I come up missing, my boss is responsible for it. We're not seeing eye to eye on a situation, and these co-workers, he's got them wanting to kill me. I mean, it basically says it in black and white exactly what occurred. I don't know how else you can read it. But it is a defense lawyer's job to plant doubt in people's minds, especially a jury. Now, as I said, objectively, if this guy's innocent, you can imagine why he would be getting on the news and jumping on. But I have to tell you, this may not determine guilt, but the fact that he didn't even reach out to Rasheem's family when Rasheem was missing, even before his body had been found, he hadn't, extended his sympathies or anything to the family, knowing that this was one of his employees who had gone missing. So I had read Rasheem's family's Facebook posts. Some of them had tried to contact Luke, but they didn't hear back from him or they couldn't get through. They just weren't getting a response. There was really, it's only now in March that he's showing his face because he now has people after him, whereas beforehand, business as usual. Now, when his lawyer says that he signed into work at 6:22 a.m. and then signed out at 8:44 p.m. on October 2nd, he was actually in Georgia Pacific in Taylorsville working there. So he was with them. It's not like he was in some other state and then all these people were working for him in another state. He was working alongside the co-workers by the looks of it here. So, his lawyer then says, he signed into work 6:22 a.m. He signed out at 8:44 p.m. He wasn't there, and I quote, he wasn't there when whatever happened to Rasheem happened to him. How does that lawyer know when Rasheem died? The exact time, day or night when Rasheem died? He doesn't. So he can't say for a fact that Luke was not there when Rasheem had died. Or was being tortured or whatever was going on. He cannot say that Luke was not there. He can probably say that Luke was not there between 6:22 a.m. and 8:44 p.m. because he was at work. But you know what? They were all staying in the township, whether that be Taylorsville or Laurel. Apparently someone was staying at the Royal Inn in Taylorsville, and Rasheem had said that he didn't want to stay there because there were people who were after him staying at that hotel, that Royal Inn. And I'm wondering, we don't know, was Luke one of those guys? I don't know about you, but if I've just worked a 13-hour day, I'm going to be exhausted and I'm going to want a beer with some mates as soon as possible when I knock off. We don't know if Luke went to the Royal Inn with those co-workers or locals of Taylorsville who Rasheem was actually running away from. We don't know if he went back to Laurel Motel. Mark O'Mara states that Luke left his job site at Georgia Pacific, collected his personal items, and then went straight to Willacoochee, Georgia, to work the next day, which was October 3rd. There are text messages between Luke and Rasheem on the Saturday night, October 1st, at around 10:30 p.m, talking about work in Willacoochee, Georgia. I will get into those in a moment. But for the lawyer to say that Luke was there the next day working, it's a 7 to 8 hour drive to Willacoochee, Georgia. Can't see him getting in his vehicle and just driving 8 hours after working a 13-hour day. I feel he stayed overnight in either Taylorsville or Laurel. Whatever happened to Rasheem could have happened at midnight. Just because his deer trail cam image was taken at 4:32 does not mean that he was he could have been taken somewhere else for a while. He could have been killed at midnight. We don't know exactly where Luke's whereabouts were after 8:44 p.m. And I don't think he took a flight out of there, especially when he's taking his co-workers with him. Luke has given his lawyer a screenshot of a text message conversation that he apparently had with Rasheem on October 1st, dated Saturday 10:29, where the first message comes in supposedly from Rasheem, and it says, "I made it safely to my auntie. Appreciate the opportunity, man. I appreciate everything." And then Luke's in blue writing saying, "You coming back tomorrow?" And then it's repeated again about, "I made it safely to my auntie. Appreciate the opportunity, man. I appreciate everything." Luke says, "You coming back?" And again, the same message is repeated from Rasheem's phone. And then in blue, Luke says, "Okay, good." And then Rasheem says, "Hell yeah, if I can, I need to go buy me a car tomorrow. How long we going to be on this end?" And then Luke says, "Finish tomorrow, hopefully then to Willacoochee, Georgia," which is GA, Georgia. And that says it was delivered. And then for some reason, there's a message down below that says 10/4. I don't know what that means, but it could be the 4th of October. I'm not sure. Maybe the family know what that is. But I find it strange that there's 3 messages that have been repeated saying, "I made it safely to my auntie. Appreciate the opportunity, man. I appreciate everything." Now at 10:30, from what we know, from what Rasheem's mum Tiffany had said, he was on the run from guys at that stage. And the fact he's saying, "I made it safely to my auntie," I want to know what the conversations were beforehand. Why has he even said, "I made it safely"? Is he telling Luke that I've got guys chasing me? Where are the other texts? Or could it be that Rasheem was scared of Luke and was letting him know, "I've made it safely somewhere," making it out to be that he's with a relative, he's at someone's house that he knows. He might have tried to make it out to them that he was actually in Fayette, that he'd gotten a lift and had left the vicinity. If he was, scared and he was just trying to pacify the situation, and perhaps to throw them off that he was still in Taylorsville. In November, the Sheriff Joel Houston stated that Rasheem's co-workers were ruled out as suspects because their phones pinged nearly 100 miles away at another job site when Carter was allegedly last seen alive on that deer trail cam on October 2nd. And he stated that Rasheem's co-workers had claimed that Rasheem was not his normal self. He was moody. He wouldn't joke with them the way he did in previous days. And I think this is why people are talking about this mental illness. They're playing the mental illness card. And Tiffany, his mum, had stated that he was quite lucid when she was on the phone talking with him. He doesn't have a history of mental illness. He wasn't hallucinating. He wasn't not himself. Like, he wasn't someone that was visibly struggling in terms of being able to function or anything like that. But I can imagine that if he's having an issue with these co-workers, that would explain a change in his mood. When we look at those texts that we read before between Luke and Rasheem on October the 1st, Luke says, after we finish this job, we'll be going to Willacoochee in Georgia. And I'm thinking he would have other employees under him. I can't imagine he would just have Rasheem working for him. So maybe those co-workers do know Luke. Opposed to them coming from other states and just working for different companies, I'm pretty sure these guys work under Luke, which means that he would have more pull if he is involved, okay, if he is responsible allegedly. It would show that he'd have some kind of influence perhaps over the guys. So that makes me question then, why would co-workers be 100 miles away at another job site if they're all meant to be somewhere together? That's just what I'm thinking, because it seems like they are all working together. I mean, in one of the articles I read, it states that Joel Houston says that 4 to 5 of those co-workers that Rasheem had mentioned were 100 miles away. You would think that if they were all working for different contractors or companies, they would be in different directions in different states at different distances away from each other. So it does sound like to me this is a group that works under Luke. And Luke was working with Georgia Pacific on October 2nd from 6:22 a.m. till 8:44 p.m. I found a post on one of the family's Facebook pages, and it's a letter from Luke's lawyer stating that Rasheem was walking around the Taylorsville area, was seen at the dollar store and a convenience store via video. And this was at the time that Luke and most all of the workers were at the job site at Georgia Pacific Taylorsville. Were the co-workers with Luke that day? And if not, where were they? Seeing as the job hasn't even started in Georgia yet. And Georgia is over 400 miles away from Taylorsville, so I'm not sure where the 100 miles is coming from. It's interesting that Mark O'Mara also mentioned that in order for him to help Luke prove his innocence, he needs Luke to gather as much information as he can to prove his whereabouts on the day that Rasheem had disappeared. He said, I need your employment records and your phone records. And so Luke's given those. I don't know how much he's given to the lawyer in terms of the whole conversation that he had with Rasheem. He says that he passed a polygraph, but you know, I don't really trust those things. They don't hold a lot of weight in the court, so that's not something I'm really that interested in. I would think that it's up to the police to do their investigating to confirm whether Luke's records are correct. There has been a timesheet of sign in and sign out for employees, including Luke, at the job at Georgia Pacific on that October 2nd. But I've seen comments from many people under the family's Facebook post on that, stating that the times are all different, it's just not in order, and it's all written by the same person. So it's just, it looks a bit dodgy, to be honest. It does look dodgy. And we don't really know. I mean, if he's just writing it up himself or just sending, you know, one text or one screenshot of texts, it doesn't really give the full picture. And the police need to be questioning him thoroughly to find out, where were you after 8:44 p.m. You know, I don't know if Rasheem's family have the rest of the texts, but I just find it strange that Rasheem wrote to Luke, I made it safely to my auntie. I just find that strange, why he would be saying that when he's meant to be working the next day with Luke at Georgia Pacific. We don't know why Rasheem felt that his boss, Luke Clements, had it in for him and was responsible for his disappearing. But there has to be a reason why Rasheem was afraid for his life, why he had gone to the police twice and had texted his mother the names of his co-workers and his boss, stating that if he ended up going missing, they're responsible. It could be fact that Luke was not with Rasheem at the time of Rasheem's disappearance and death. But if true that Luke is responsible as Rasheem claimed, it doesn't mean Luke had to physically be there with Rasheem as those events were occurring. Rasheem basically said Luke is the main man responsible for orchestrating me going missing. He has these guys, i.e. his co-workers, wanting to kill me. Meaning that Luke has given orders or incited violence and harm amongst his co-workers towards Rasheem. Allegedly, of course. A person responsible for organising a murder is just as guilty as those actually doing the murdering. It's like if somebody hires a hitman. The hitman is at the kill site, they do the killing, but the person responsible is somewhere else away from the victim and the crime scene. And it seems the investigation hasn't even gone anywhere in terms of investigating those co-workers. The name of the co-worker who Rasheem had a disagreement with, who was giving him a ride to work and told him he couldn't drive him anymore, I'm interested in him, because usually when you look at a person who's disappeared, you usually have to look at a person that they've had conflict with. I'd be really interested in finding out if that co-worker was in Taylorsville at Georgia Pacific on October 2nd, the day that Rasheem disappeared, because his name isn't on that list. I'm not going to give the name, you could find that on the internet yourself, but his name is not on the list of co-workers that were there at Georgia Pacific that day. So, where was he? On February the 25th, Rasheem's family held a beautiful funeral service for him, and it's just so sad seeing these photos, especially with his little girl there as well. When we look into these horrible tragedies with murder victims, especially people who've never really known the victim, we tend to just associate them with their tragic death. Rasheem was described as being a loving and doting father to his daughter. He was smart. He had dreams and visions for a beautiful career. He was running his own seafood restaurant, and he was very generous and caring to his local community. He would donate school uniforms to those children and families who couldn't afford them. He was just a really beautiful person. As it stands today, in May 2023, protests are still occurring. There was one last on April 29th in Taylorsville, where a Black Lives Matter rally occurred, where many attendees from the Israel United in Christ movement came along to support Rasheem's family and demand justice. Many other support groups were there as well. It's amazing to see these people turn up for Tiffany and her family.
This has really been a struggle for our family, but we're going to do the best we can to fight. We're going to do the best we can to fight. We're going to do what we got to do to get the justice that we deserve to have.
Ben Crump, Rasheem's family's lawyer, continues to advocate for the family and has put in a request for the Department of Justice to get involved. They believe there's a higher level of investigation that needs to be applied here. People need to be held accountable, not only those who are involved in killing Rasheem, but for also those in power, in law enforcement, who Rasheem had gone to for help and who failed him. They too need to be investigated. Just recently there has been a $50,000 reward put out by the family and You Are the Power. The $50,000 will be awarded to a person who has information that will bring about a conviction of Rasheem's killer. And tips can be sent to youarethepower.net/tips. You Are the Power is a membership-based non-profit organisation whose network has a shared social media reach of over 50 million and a working relationship with activists and organisations in all 50 states of America. They help empower individuals, reminding them of their rights. They help communities to implement much-needed change with government policies, and they aim to hold government organisations, including law enforcers, accountable for any abuse of power. If Rasheem's family come across this video, I just want to extend my deepest sympathies and condolences to you and to Rasheem's daughter. You guys are just strong, you're amazing. I just am sending so much love your way. I know that God is standing beside you as you fight for justice for your beautiful boy, Rasheem. Tiffany, you are a strong mama. I know Rasheem would be so proud of how brave you and your family have been through this whole ordeal. I'm sending all my love to you guys, praying that you receive your justice very soon. Rasheem's family have a GoFundMe account where donations can help go towards a private investigator, as well as many other expenses, I'm sure, including their lawyers' fees. If you'd be kind enough to donate to that, there is a link in the description box below, and I'm sure his family would be so grateful and appreciative for anything that you donate. Please spread awareness of this case. Please share this video. There are Justice for Rasheem posters. There's campaigns you can be a part of to help this family receive the justice they desperately deserve. Thank you for watching, guys. Please comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'll meet you on the live. And for those who can't make it, I will catch you next time, guys. Love and blessings. Have a great day.